Hello everyone and welcome to the Home Cook, where today we're going to be making some tortillas from scratch. I would say handmade tortillas, but I ended up using a mixer, so I guess not handmade, not completely handmade, but it's all from scratch. So I started with 2 cups of all-purpose flour. I didn't necessarily sift it. I guess you can if you really want to, but just for the simple fact that I'm making a sort of dough bread, I didn't sift it. So I'm just going to grab the 2 cups and put that into my mixing bowl. Once you're going to add all the dry ingredients first, and then you're going to mix in some lard or bacon fat or Crisco, whatever you use. So after the 2 cups of flour, I added half a teaspoon of salt as well as half a teaspoon of baking powder. Now baking powder is incredibly important when it comes to making tortillas. It's one of those ingredients that tends to be in, aside from the flour, tends to be in most of the recipes. And I also added a tablespoon of sugar, and the only reason I did this, and it's not in any recipes, but the only reason I did this is because I'm not using that sort of natural sweetener from lard, pork fat, or from bacon fat. I'm using Crisco instead, which is just vegetable shortening. That's why I added the sugar to it. It's going to give it a lot better. After making this recipe a couple times, I've realized that the sugar, you're definitely needing the sugar, as it gives a little bit more flavor profile. So just quickly stir all the dry ingredients together while it's already sitting in the mixer, and you're going to get a 1/4 cup of lard, Crisco, or bacon fat again. The first time I ever made this recipe, I used a 1/4 teaspoon instead of a 1/4 cup. And granted, my 1-year-old nephew loved it, but I didn't necessarily like it too much. It had a good flavor, but they weren't soft, they weren't fluffy. They were just kind of these hard tortillas. So you just want to mix it by hand. You put in the Crisco, or again, whatever you use, mix it by hand. And once you start to get little thick balls and it starts to look really grainy, not necessarily like a powder or fluffy like traditional flour is, then you can move on to the next step. So in this step, I turned it on low, right above stir, just so I can start to form a dough ball, and I'm slowly going to pour in 3/4 of a cup of water, and slowly do it. Here you see it start to get a little sticky, a little doughier. So here I just heavily floured a working surface, floured my hands, and then I'm going to just pull all the dough out. I probably could have let it mix a little bit longer, but I really wanted to start kneading it and getting it formed a little better by hand. So you'll see how it's really sticky, and if it's sticky like this, what I do is I just add a little bit more flour, just a pinch more flour. That's a little bit more than a pinch, but a little bit of like a 3-finger grab of flour, and just continually mix it, and eventually you slowly add this until it forms a ball. I think I did like 3 pinches maybe. That's just to get it not so sticky, a little bit more doughy, I guess. So then I just kind of beat it like it owes me money, and then I decided to stretch it out into a square. This will allow it to be easier to get more uniformly squared pieces. So I decided to cut it in half, and you can do 8 to 12. I decided to do 8. Well, you see here I cut 3, but the other one's thicker, so I cut more out of there. And one thing advice I would highly recommend is, after you cut them all into squares, roll them up into balls like this in your hand. And then I only did it for one really, but you roll it into a ball, and then once you put it onto your the floured surface, you just smash it down, and that'll allow it to have more of a circular tortilla, traditional tortilla shape. So don't forget to flour your rolling pin as well, if you're using a rolling pin. I don't have a tortilla press or anything, so this just happens to be the easiest way for me. But it will stick to the tortilla roller, to the rolling pin, if you don't heavily flour it as well. So here I'm just doing 1 or 2 rolls, and then I'm flipping it, turning it 90 degrees, so I can get that, so it's not oblong or oval shape. It tries to stay more round. And if they fold up on this, it's fine. You can add more flour, but I don't want to add more flour than I already did. So get it about an 1/8 inch thick, and then you should be good to move on to the next one. So I believe I made 4 of the tortillas, maybe 5 or 6, I don't know, anywhere more than 3. But I made them before I turned the pan on. Granted, I probably should have done it as I was doing this, but for the sake of time, if you do it as you heat it up to, they say medium high. A lot of recipes recommend medium high, and some people do as well, but I have found the best way to do it is on medium. Especially if you're still rolling your tortillas out while you're cooking it, you don't have to keep such a mindful eye on the pan, and the medium heat will play a huge factor in how I do the last 4 of the tortillas. So I did 4 tortillas, just the normal recipe, nothing special added, and then I decided to, in the end, you'll see in just a second, but the easiest way to keep them warm while you're cooking the rest is to just put them in a paper or a cloth, a washcloth or something, clean washcloth, something like this. You don't want to put them in a bag because they're still hot and they're still getting rid of a lot of their the water in them, so they'll steam up and get soggy. So you just leave them in a cloth for a little bit, and this is where it matters that I had medium heat. So you could tell I have 2 different colors. One's more a little yellow, one's super white. So the yellow one, I added a 1/4 teaspoon of butter to each side as I cooked it. And actually, for some reason, my camera messed up. That's why they're cut in half. As I recorded the end, and for some reason it didn't capture the last 15 minutes of recording. I don't know why, so I had to just improvise the end. But basically, with the 1/4 cup, when you're cooking with the butter to make butter tortillas, it's the same way. You just one side, cook it again like normal. You just kind of melt the butter down, not where it's cooking or browning, and you just do each side like that. And they turn out fantastic. I would highly recommend the buttered ones. They're super soft, super fluffy. They taste delicious. They're not super buttery. And I will catch y'all next time. You have a great and fantastic day.